Hello, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about solving systems of equations by substitution. And this is just another way to find a solution to a system of equations. And so the first thing we are going to do is to use the substitution method. And the substitution method is used to solve systems of linear equations by solving the equation for one variable and then substituting that resulting expression into the other equation. It sounds complicated, but it's actually not so bad. If I were to take and look at the, I'm going to try to enlarge this so you can see it a little better. If we take and look at these two equations, and I see that I have a y by itself and I have a y by itself. So my choice is to solve for y and to get my expression that I need to substitute into the second equation. So I'm just going to take this first one, and the goal is to get y by itself. And so I'm going to add 3x to both sides, and I'm going to get 3x plus 1. And I'm just going to show this off to the side. I feel like that just makes it a lot easier to do. Go ahead and move that too. Alright, so we have 3x minus 1, or plus 1, is going to be our expression that we are going to plug in place of our y in our second expression. So we have our 4x plus y equals 8. And the reason I put this big box for y is because I'm going to put this 3x, because we said that y equals 3x plus 1, I'm going to put in that place. I don't need the box, I was just there to show you. So I have 4x plus 3x plus 1 equals 8. Now I can combine my like terms, and I get 7x plus 1 equals 8. I can solve by moving the 1 over, subtracting 1 from both sides, and I get 7x equals 7. And then if I divide both sides by 7, I get x equals 1. So I know what my x is. I know my x is going to be a 1. And now I have to find out what my y is going to be. So what I'm going to do is then I'm going to replace x in my equation, and I'm still going to use my first equation. So I'm going to take negative 3x, or negative 3 times 1, because that's what we found for x, plus y equals 1. And if I take negative 3 times 1, I get negative 3. And if I add 3 to both sides, I get y equals 4. So my ordered pair for this is 1, 4. Now we can substitute the values that we found, and we can use that to we can use graphing to determine if we've got the right one. So we said that our ordered pair was 1, 4, and we want to know, does it really work? Okay, so let's check it by graphing. And one way would be to graph both those lines by changing them into slope-intercept form and then graphing them. Another way is to use our x and y intercept to determine where where they would cross. So remember, if it's an x-intercept, y is always going to be 0. So let's take and replace y with 0, and I get negative 3x equals 1. I would divide both sides by negative 3, so x would equal negative 1/3. My y-intercept, my x is always 0. So in this case, I'm going to substitute my 0 for x, and so 0 plus 1, or plus y equals 1, so y equals 1. So I have my y-intercept is here, my x-intercept is here. It's very tiny, but we're going to go ahead and make that work, and we're going to graph this line. Looks like about there. We'll see. Might be close. Our next one is the other equation. So remember, x-intercept, y has to be 0. So we're replacing y with 0. 4x equals 8 divided by 4, and 8 divided by 4 is 2. So my x-intercept is at 2. And then for it to be a y-intercept, x has to be 0, so replacing x with 0 in the same equation. 0 plus y equals 8, so y equals 8. So there's my y-intercept. And then I'm going to draw my line through these points. And they're not too bad. There's where they cross, and that's at 1, 4. And so, yes, we confirmed that the solution is 1, 4 for that system of equations. Remember, when you're graphing, you can change these equations to your slope-intercept and then graph, or you can find your x and y intercepts. Either one works. All right, so we're going to do the your turn. We're going to solve each system of linear equations by substitution. So let's take a look at number 4. I see I have y by itself, so I want to pick one and just make arrangements for it to be the one we want. So let's go ahead and do the first one. I want to subtract 3x from both sides. I get y equals negative 3x plus 11. And now I'm going to substitute this y with this expression. So I'm going to have negative 2x minus 3x equals plus 11 equals 1. So this whole thing came from up here. Okay? So I have negative 3x and negative 2x. I'm going to combine those. It's going to give me negative 5x plus 11 equals 1. Subtract 11 from both sides. 1 minus 11 is negative 10. Divide by negative 5. X equals 2. So there's our first. Now I'm going to substitute 2 into the same equation. So substitute 2 in. So 3 times 2 plus y equals 11. That's 6. Subtract 6. Y equals 5. Another way to remember to see if these both work is, I know that 2 and 5 worked for my first equation. Let's try it on the second equation. So if x is 2 and y is 5, does it equal 1? So that's negative 4 plus 5. That's 1. Does 1 equal 1? Yes, it checks out. So yes, this is a solution to this equation, or series of equations. Okay, let's look at number 5. What variable would you substitute today? If you said x, I agree, because x is by itself on this equation. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to change that to where x is by itself. So I'm going to subtract 6y from both sides, and I get x is negative 6y plus 18. So in this case, I'm going to substitute this x right here. Okay, so I'm going to have 2 times negative 6y plus 18 minus 3y equals negative 24. And so I'm going to distribute. That's going to be negative 12y plus 32 minus 3y equals negative 24. Now I'm going to combine my like terms. I get negative 15y plus 32 equals negative 24. I'm going to subtract 32 from each side. And that's going to give me negative 56. Just realized I did an error. And those are not 32, those are 36. So we're going to subtract 36 from negative 24, and we're going to get, let's see, that's 10, and so I'm going to get negative 60. Divide by negative 15, and y equals 4. So in my ordered pair, my y is 4. Now, we're going to take our, in our equation, we're going to replace our y with 4 and find out what x is. So 2 times x minus 3 times 4 equals negative 24. That's negative 12. Add 12 to both sides. And I get 2x equals negative 12. Divide by 2. X equals negative 6. Now let's test it. I can replace the x with negative 2. That's negative 12. Add 12 to both sides. Divide by 3. I get y is 4. That checks out. Okay? Alright, so that means that it works. Our ordered pair of negative 6, 4 is the answer to the system of equations. Take a look at this one. Which one would you substitute in? Solve, find the ordered pair, and then meet me at the end. Okay, so you should have simplified to get x by itself. Plug it into the other equation. So we have 2y plus x substituting in for x. And then we have combine my like terms. So I get y is negative 7. Then I take my y is negative 7 and I plug it into the same equation. So I have 3x minus 5 times negative 7 equals 8. Simplify that and I get x is equal to negative 9. So my ordered pair is negative 9, negative 7. Okay, now we're going to solve problems with systems of equations. And it says, as a class day, the 8th grade is doing a treasure hunt. Each team is given the following riddle and map. At what point is the treasure located? There's pirate treasure to be found, so search on the island all around and draw a line through A and B. Then draw another through C and D. Place a jig. X marks a spot. So A, B, draw a line. So there's your, there's where the treasure is expected to be. So we're going to give the coordinates of each point, and we're going to find the slope of the line. So from A to B, we find the slope is 3 halves. And then for the CD, we found the slope is negative 8 over 2, which is negative 4. Then we're going to find our B, or our slope intercepts. So we're using the negative, or the 3 halves, and that one of the ordered pairs. Find out that B is 2. And so graph it. So here's 2. Our slope is negative 3, 2. Or sorry, positive 3, 2, up 3 over 2. And so graph our points. Draw our line. And then the same thing for between C and D. Using an ordered pair, substitute to find out what our y-intercept is, and it's at 0. And it's at 0 with a negative 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Draw your line, and it says it's at this point right here. Those numbers are x is negative 4/11 and y is 16 over 11. So sometimes they don't look so pretty, but we can still find them. All right, let's take a look at your turn number 8. Ace Car Rentals rents cars for X dollars per day plus Y dollars for each mile driven. Carlos rented a car for 4 days, drove it 160 miles, and spent $120. Vanessa rented a car for 1 day, drove it 240 miles, and spent $80. Write the equations to represent Carlos's expenses and Vanessa's expenses. Then solve the system and tell what each number represents. All right, so the first thing we have to do is we have to write our equation for Carlos. So we know he drove it for 4 days, and he drove it 160 miles, and he spent $120. So let's come up with our equation for that first. So Carlos drove it for 4 days, so that's X is going to be our days, and Y is going to be our number of miles. So 4 days plus 160 miles, and that's spent a total of $120. So there's Carlos. Then we have Vanessa. She rented the car for 1 day, drove it 240 miles, and spent a total of $80. So there's our two equations. So there's our system. And now let's solve. I see that the X is by itself, so I'm going to use that to simplify. So I'm going to substitute in my X values. So X equals, I'm going to subtract 240 from each side, plus 80. So this is what I'm going to substitute into this equation. So 4 times negative 240y plus 80 plus 160y equals 120. Going to distribute first, and that gives me 960y negative plus 4 times 80, 320, plus 160y equals 120. Okay, combine my like terms. If I take negative 960 plus 160, I get negative 800y plus 320 equals 120. I'm going to double check my math. And that's correct. And then I'm going to take 120 and I'm going to subtract 320 from it. And I'm going to get negative 800y equals negative 200. Divide both sides by 800. And y is going to equal 0.25. Okay? So 0.25. Now I have to find my x. So I'm going to take this, plug it back into this equation. So I've got my 4x plus my 160 times my y, which we know is 25 hundredths, equals 120. So if I simplify 160 times 0.25, and I get 40. Subtract 40 from both sides, I get 80. Divide both by 4, I get x is 20. So my ordered pair is 20 and 25 hundredths. And they want to know what each number represents. Well, my x, we said, was my number of days. So that's going to be my cost per day. Is $20. And the number of the cost per mile, that's your y. And so cost per mile would cost them about 25 cents a mile. Okay? If you have any questions, please make sure you see your teacher. Thank you.